As we all know, drag racing's roots were sunk deep on the post-World War II boulevards and avenues of Southern California by young hot rodders who tinkered with their jalopies and home builds with little more than their imaginations and pocket money. It was a motorsport that included every man, not a creation born from the privileged classes. Organized drag racing became a growth industry through the efforts of Wally Parks and, of course, the National Hot Rod Association. In its early development stages, the sport began taking on form and function, as drag strips themselves evolved from unused airstrips and salt lakes to purpose-built facilities primarily in Southern California. As the events themselves took on more of a structured look and feel, drag racing truly moved from a slapdash hobby to a full-fledged sport. By the middle and late 1950s, it had clearly arrived. One aspect of the sport that had remained virtually unchanged during those early years was the starting procedure. It consisted basically of an official starter who, once the cars had been positioned at the starting line, paused momentarily and then waved a green flag to start the race. It was a primitive system that was fraught with inconsistencies. False starts were common. Racers argued constantly about unfair head starts they perceived their opponents had enjoyed. And yet, it was the way drag races were started well into the 1960s. Until the advent of what we now call the Christmas tree, which arrived at the NHRA from the Klondike Electronics Company. It immediately changed the face of drag racing forever. The man who perhaps has the most intimate understanding of how the Christmas tree impacted drag racing is the man who epitomized the position of official starter for the NHRA for almost 50 years, Buster Couch.
Well, before the Winternationals, a week before in Fontana Dragway, at that time in California, which is no longer in existence, but it was a pretty big track. They had a bunch of fuel cars and everything there that week, practicing and testing, and a big money meet before the Winternationals next week. So Bernie Partridge and I, we both division directors at that time, Jack Hart and Wally sent us out there with a tree. Mickey Thompson was running the track at that time, and Don Rackman, I think, was his track manager. So we go out there and hook up the tree that morning, and hook it all up. It working good. First two cars that leave the line, it didn't work right. Boy, the racers wanted to kill us. Get that junk out of here now. So we go back and work on it again. We get it to working perfect. Maybe we'll run one or two cars, then it wouldn't work again. Something would go wrong. They cussed us and the whole works. So we finally decided before we got killed, we'd just take it and go home. So we took it and went back home. And about 5 or 6 years later, I found out that Rackman was up in the tower pulling the plug every time he didn't want it to work because they didn't think the racers would like it.
Over the years, the Christmas tree itself went through a series of changes. In the beginning, all races ran from a full 5-amber half-second sequence to the green light. Later, the system was changed to a simpler 3-amber half-second sequence. And then ultimately, the professional categories were given the current system, in which all 3 ambers light simultaneously, with the green coming exactly 0.4 of a second later. The NHRA sportsman categories all run several variations of starting sequences, including a handicap system, which allows cars of differing classes to compete equally, and also to allow drivers to choose their own dial-ins. An entire aftermarket electronics industry has grown up around helping drivers take the fullest advantage of the Christmas tree system when launching their cars. And of course, the dreaded red light at the bottom of the tree has all but eliminated those bitter arguments that often erupted in those good old days. Every sport has its honor roll of pioneers, men and women who have helped to define the very sport in which they compete, and have made lasting influences that are still being felt within that sport today. This car, Swamp Rat 14, was built and raced by drag racing's most ingenious innovator, who not only won races and championships, but with this very car, helped to create the mechanical backbone of top fuel racing as we know it today. He's a man whose name has become synonymous with top fuel racing, and he, of course, is Big Daddy Don Garlits. Top fuel racing was on the fast track in the 60s. Most of what was really happening in the class was coming into its own out west, where nitromethane was flowing like the tide waters of the Pacific. The NHRA had banned fuel for a number of years beginning in 1957. But once nitro was back at the track, the fuel wars were soon back up to speed. By then, Don Garlits had begun forging a presence in top fuel racing from his home base in Florida. His rivalries with West Coast racers are of legend, as are the many innovations that sprung from his race shop and appeared on his string of Swamp Rat fuelers. But the most reverberating brainstorm ever to be credited to Big Daddy is one that still provides the fundamental basis for every top fuel racer competing in the world today, the rear-engine dragster.
When I look at drag racing as a whole, I think Don Garlett's for sure was the most innovative and brightest guy that I've seen come down the pike.
Regardless, he has brought along the way a lot of innovations that are used today and then gone to the next step, of course.
On March 8, 1970, Big Daddy was competing at the old Lions drag strip in Long Beach, California, when his two-speed transmission exploded, breaking his left leg, severing his right foot at the arch, and nearly killing him. As he lay in Pacific Coast Hospital, recuperating, he vowed he would create a top fuel car that would no longer subject drivers to the risk of injury and death that had tragically befallen a host of drivers. Although rear-engine dragsters had been built in the past, it was Garlett's who proved they could not only be competitive, but also win races.
I'll never forget being down a Lions drag strip. We were down there with our front engine cars, and we heard he had a rear engine car, and he come pulling in there, and we weren't going to laugh at him, but we were close to it because nobody was successful with the rear engine car. And lo and behold, he just blew us all away, and without a rear wing on the car too, which was unbelievable.
With help from then crew member and former driver Connie Swingle, Garlett's built his first rear-engine dragster and went on to win the 1971 AHRA Top Fuel Championship. Plus, he won the NHRA Winternationals, Spring Nationals, and had set new ET records in both sanctioning bodies. The danger that had hovered over top fuel racing since its inception, with drivers sitting inches behind their nitro-burning engines, became a thing of the past. And Big Daddy Don Garlett, along with his other legendary exploits, set the stage for the 4-second, 330-mile-per-hour top fuel performances of today. Wrong or right, drag racing was a sport that was a guy thing for the 25 years or so that followed its formative years in that ever-changing Southern California gene pool. While women had competed as drivers here and there during that time, it wasn't until 1966, when Shirley Shahan won stock eliminator at the NHRA Winternationals, that the idea of women racing toe-to-toe with men seemed reasonable. But it was another Shirley who caught everyone's attention in drag racing spotlight in 1977 that proved that the right woman with the right talent and the right team could race their way into a Winston Championship. Shirley Muldowney. She and husband Jack began their drag racing career like many other racers back in the 1960s in upstate New York, with a series of low-budget door slammers and dragsters. By the mid-1970s, she was building a solid reputation in both NHRA and AHRA top fuel racing. After the breakup of her marriage, Shirley continued to race and developed a professional and personal relationship with veteran fuel racer Connie Coletta. Never one to back down or feel intimidated, Shirley Muldowney slowly earned the respect of her male top fuel adversaries, and in 1975 made it to the finals of the U.S. Nationals, only to lose to the driver who signed off on her first top fuel license, Don Garlett. But in 1977, Shirley took her brash, no-fear attitude and icy determination to the NHRA Winston Top Fuel Championship, the first woman ever to win a professional title in any motorsport. In 1980, she proved her first championship was no fluke, as she won the Winston title again, the first driver, man or woman, to win a second Winston Top Fuel crown.
It takes more than just a driver to pull that out. It takes a team. And, you know, when there's somebody over in that lane that you really want to dust off, that really has got it coming, you know, you just hope and pray that your guys did their job right, because they're the ones that pull it out for you.
By now, Shirley was a genuine racing superstar, whose snarky one-liners and pugnacious disposition made her a fan favorite. She delighted in her celebrity, and her tuner, Ron Tobler, was destined to become her second husband. Her third Top Fuel title in 1982 set another drag racing milestone, and her future looked to be even brighter. But in June of 1984, while qualifying for the NHRA La Grande Nationals at Senair Drag Strip in Montreal, Shirley was severely injured in a crash at close to 250 miles per hour and would need 2 years to recuperate. Before returning to drag racing in 1986 with limited sponsorship, Shirley and Ron were unable to recapture their championship performance, with which they had turned the sport upside down only a few years earlier. And today, she competes on a scaled-down schedule at IHRA national events and various match races.
I will never retire. I won't go through the retirement program that they're all going through. I don't want any part of that. When I'm gone, I will quit. I will not retire.
But make no mistake, Shirley Muldowney opened the door for other women who would follow, allowing them to compete heads-up with men in the brutally powerful sport of top fuel racing, such as national event winners Lori Johns, Lucille Lee, Shelley Anderson, and Kristen Powell. Few drag racers of any gender in any category can boast 3 Winston titles. And yet, Shirley Muldowney not only won them, but made an unfading mark on the sport she loves that will long endure.